Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. Welcome to Gunjur Online TV. This is the first debate night. Hopefully, it's going to be the first of many. And as you can see, our debate motion tonight is we should reconcile rather than seek the prosecution of Jammeh and others. And just before I introduce my participants, I'll just cover a few. I'll just do a brief introduction of the issue. As we all know, we had 22 years of dictatorship under the previous regime, which was President Yahya Jammeh, and who is now in exile in Equatorial Guinea. And as we speak, there is a very lively debate that is obviously going on among us Gambians and in certain international circles as well as to what needs to be done with regards to the human rights, the gross human rights abuses, and the things that have gone wrong during the time of ex-President Jammeh's regime, which was from July 22nd, 1994, when he overthrew the previous democratically elected government of ex-president, the late Alhaji Sarr Jawara, and he stayed in office, or his government was in place until January 2017, having lost an election in December 2016. So that is what the backdrop to this conversation is, and as you may know, there is an investigation process going on in the Gambia called the RC, which is the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission. And basically, the objective of that commission is to investigate all the gross human rights abuses and everything else that went wrong, that happened during ex-President Jammeh's tenure in office, and starting from the events that lead up to the coup d'etat. So what we are having here today is not. I know the motion may seem slightly misleading, but what we are having here today is not going to be a diatribe. What I mean by that is we are not just going to have one angle of the topic being pumped out to the audience. We are not going to be having that. What we are going to be having is a debate. We have two sides, and one side is for the motion, and the other side is against the motion. So it is going to be a critical discussion, which would be objective because all the participants are very formidable public speakers, and I'm sure they will be doing their best to convince you to vote for whatever side of the question that they are trying to put across to you. But before going before introducing my participants, I'll just run you briefly through the process so that you know what to expect. What we are going to start with is every participant will have 10 minutes to give their opening statements, and after their opening statements, we'll have a break, a very short break. Then after the break, both sides would have 5 minutes each to rebut anything that was said by the other side. Then after that, we'll have another short break. Then when we come back, we'll have a half an hour window whereby we are going to be taking questions from primarily our studio audience. So for the studio audience, this is for you. Like I have said, the participants are all very formidable public speakers, and they are very informed about the side of the debate which they are trying to put across. So please ask them very tough questions. And what is going to happen is all the participants would have an opportunity to ask a question, but just for balance, the way it's going to happen is when any of the studio guests asks a question, you have to ask one question to either side, just for balance. So so if time permits, those of you that are watching us live, I would use this opportunity to say thank you very much for tuning in to watch this live event. Like I said, it's going to be hopefully the first of many, because the aim is to have one debate on a very important or key national question every month. So hopefully this is the first, and there will be many more to come. So for you that are watching us online, if you have any questions, please do send them. Do type them in the comment section and send them. The producer will pick up any questions when the time comes. If time permits, we will. I will pick up your questions, and I will be putting them to my participants. So that sets out the introduction and the backdrop of what is being discussed here tonight. So now I will introduce my participants. Unfortunately, one of them is unable to make it, so we only have 3 of them, and which is two for the motion and 1 against the motion. And the first participant that is going to be speaking for the motion is Mr. Lamin Tamba. As you know, Mr. Lamin Tamba is the well-known advocate of Jammeh, and he's part of he's a member of the APRC party, which is Jammeh's political party, and he lives in the United Kingdom. So he will be speaking for the motion tonight. And the second speaker for the motion is retired Lieutenant Colonel Sarr. Lieutenant Colonel Sarr is a well-known known figure I'm sure in Gambian circles. He's very active on social media. I am sure he needs no introduction, because I think everybody knows him. But just briefly, as you may know, he served in key positions in government. He's been a minister briefly on a Jammeh. Then he's also served as army commander, then as Gambia's ambassador to the United Nations. And the next speaker would be speaking against the motion, and that is lawyer Solomon Demba. Lawyer Solomon Demba is medically trained, and he's also legally trained as well. So he also is a very formidable public speaker, because I have had a debate with him before, and I think he's going to give Lamin Tamba and Colonel Sarr a run for their money. So my studio guests, like I've said, these 3 speakers are very formidable. So please ask them really tough questions when we get to that part of the debate. One thing I forgot to cover, I just cover now. After the question and answer session, we will have another segment whereby both sides will have 3 minutes each to make their closing remarks. And after they've made their closing remarks, at the end, we will do the final voting. The link would be shared on the screen when that time comes, and we will have a between 10 and 15 minutes window for people that would like to vote either for the motion, against the motion, or to state that they are undecided. Before this debate, or before today, there was a preliminary voting that was going on. That has now closed. Nobody will be able to vote now. But those results, what is going to happen is those results from that vote are going to be the baseline for determining who the winner is going to be. So whoever convinces more people from tonight would be the winner. But the results of the preliminary voting would be announced at the end of the first. In fact, at the beginning of the second segment, once all the three speakers have made their opening remarks, we will go for a break. Then after the break, when we come back, I'll announce those results, and then the speakers will do their rebuttals. So by way of introduction, that is it from me now. I am sure the audience want to be hearing more from the speakers and less from myself. So now I will do nothing but invite Mr. Lamin Tamba to do his opening, to do the opening statement for his side, which is going to be 10 minutes long. Mr. Tamba, when your time is up, you will you will hear this noise.
Yeah.
For 5 times, then that should be an indication that your time is up. But when you are a minute closer, 9 minutes, 2 or 3 times. But when you hear me hitting the glass continuously, that would be an indication that your time is up.
Okay.
So you have your 1 second. Let me just start my timer just to ensure that everything is fair. I'll just give everybody a fair opportunity. So I'll just start my timer. And once the timer is on, you can start. So it's up to you now. The floor is yours. Your 10 minutes starts now, Mr. Tamba.
Right. Thank you very much, Pa Sambou Jr. or Louis Sambou. Thank you very much, Gunjur Online. Before we go further, I'd like to thank the platform, the crew, the people who make all this thing happen behind the scenes. So much thanks to Gunjur Online. Thank you very much, Pa Sambou Jr., for inviting me to this platform. And also to my colleagues in the panel, Colonel Sarr, retired, Mr. Demba. Thank you very much for turning up tonight. It's a shame Dr. Njie couldn't make it, but anyway, Mr. Demba is here. I'm sure he'll do us justice in terms of the motion or going against the motion. So I'm speaking today in favor of the motion of Gambia seeking to reconcile rather than going all the way. And the reason I lay this is because one thing I do, and this is why people think I don't get angry. This is why people think sometimes I'm insensitive. No. One thing I do, to start with, I'm Gambian, born and bred in the countryside. And we have a culture. We have family ties. We have family relations. When anything happens in our family setting, our cultural setting, we sit down, we open up, we talk, we resolve it, and we put everything in place to ensure it doesn't recur. That's how we were brought up culturally. So this culture will be central to my motions in favor of reconciliation. This is how we are brought up, and it worked. People say there was no judicial system in the Gambia. There was no adjudication or jurisprudence in the Gambia or in Africa. In fact, that's where justice probably started. As you know, some of you here, even if you haven't studied law, you know there's something called mediation. You know there's something called reconciliation. there are some other alternative dispute resolution mechanisms in place, which our communities, our families, our countries had before we had this Western education and adopted the common law that we mimic from the United Kingdom. Now, we had a way of sitting down and talking, bringing families together, bringing different people, stakeholders together, and sitting down and talking the truth, opening up, emptying our chest and talking together and resolving matters and moving on. And part of that is our community, where we all come together and grow our children. We all come together and marry our sisters or marry our brothers. We all come together and name people as the beginning of life. And we all come together and inter or bury people at the end of life. We do this together, and we do it as a community, and we do it culturally. Until religion came, we used to do it the old way that we did. Religion has changed the way Muslims bury their dead, the way Christians bury their dead. But we're still doing it in a family manner. We sit down and talk. And in fact, today, despite the common law, our communities often resort to informal reconciliation, talking to families, begging, pleading, and then saying sorry, sorting the problem out. And people need to understand one thing. Saying sorry doesn't mean you accepted responsibility. It's a case of recognizing that something has gone wrong that shouldn't have gone wrong without you having to take full responsibility. But if you know you were involved and you want to take responsibility, it's good too. For me personally, I like people who are blunt, people who go straight to the point and say to me, yes, I did come here and stole $5 from you. I would say to them, okay, well, you shouldn't have stolen the $5. It's unlikely I'm going to lob a small grenade at them. But if somebody's taking me around the bend, and eventually I found out that they actually stole the $5, I will be more annoyed with that person than somebody who told me at the beginning. So I saved my energy, I saved my time. I also had time to get over it much quicker than mulling over it, and then finding out that's the person that did. So central to this, the whole reconciliation issue. Let's forget Jammeh for 1 minute. Let's forget people who wronged Jammeh or people who Jammeh might have wronged, because we still don't know. Investigations are taking place as they claim. I have my own reservations with the TRRC, but we'll leave that for today. Investigations are taking place. Families are talking. We've seen people go to TRRC and reconcile. They didn't ask for a penny. Please, I beg my Fuller people for forgiveness. Apart from that lady that came to TRRC and asked for a house and a business, people were not asking for anything. They said, well, sorry, we recognize that something wrong has happened. This is what happened. And we will try and not repeat the same. And in fact, if there was a little bit of assistance from the side of the government should give that assistance to these families, their relatives or whatever. Now, let's move beyond our culture, because our culture is there, it's been cemented. We practice these things. We are very, very closely knit community, especially the Gambia. Everyone knows everyone. So if we're not going to depart from our culture, we should be looking at ways of resolving these disputes without going through the law courts, because that's what we are. That's how we were brought up. That's how Jammeh resolved the PPP thing. He just went straight. No investigations into 1973, 1975, 1980, 1981 to 84, 85, even up to 89, families were being rounded up. Families were still being beaten by canes by the PPP government. But I don't want to go deep into that. I'll leave that to one side. We need to look at what works for the Gambia. And central to that is our culture. Let's depart from our culture now. We go to what keeps government business running. Government is a business. It's public entity. And for public entities to run properly, there'll be laws that govern what you can and cannot do. If you're allowed to do something, how you should do that. All right? So therefore, our government, Gambia government, has got laws in place. And those laws tell us how we must conduct ourselves while in government. And the most supreme of those laws is the Constitution of the Gambia. Right now, the relevant constitution is the 1997 Constitution of the Gambia. It laid laws as to how our government business must be run. And it stated as to how our former government officials should be investigated. What should happen to them when they leave office for things that they did or they didn't do. Forget about sentiment. Forget about taking your own hands or putting the law or taking the law into your hands. Forget about that for 1 minute. I think the problem we have most of the time as Gambians, we get emotional, we get sentimental, we do something and then we regret it. Unfortunately, these things happen when we're in positions of authority and we have abused authority and then turn around and blame somebody else. All right. So let's go back to the fundamental law, the supreme law that governs government business. That's the Constitution of the Gambia. The Constitution of the Gambia, as you've seen, including the American lawyers that many African people are worshiping, because this is what Africa is good at. We don't believe in ourselves. We don't look at resolving matters on our own. We look at the white savior, the Westerners, to come and tell us how we should resolve our own disputes, knowing fully well that we have a culture, knowing fully well that we have a constitution. We basically go out, breach those laws, ignore our culture so that we can have a bite at the other person that we don't like. So my conversation today will be centered around our culture, will be centered around our constitution, and we'll look at what Jammeh did or didn't do. A lot of it, we don't know if he did it himself or if he ordered it himself, albeit with some confessions at TRRC. We don't know whether these are still 100% true or whether these people are actually doing what Gambians are good at. They will cry as to what punishment was levied, as what punishment was placed on them. But it's very difficult for people to come and say, yes, sorry, I was punished because I took 2 million from the national coffers, or I wanted to go and kill somebody and I got picked up. We don't say that. We never tell people what happened. In fact, sometimes they've done it. They say, no, we didn't do it. But if you put them in the right environment, they'll say, oh, yeah, in fact, I was the mastermind. I was the one behind this. Because the environment is now right for them to confess. So we need to be careful. Allegations are allegations. Our constitution, our basic principle of law is innocent until proven guilty. Now, one day, if everything comes to the clear and there's substantial information, compelling evidence to tie the APRC party or Jammeh to all these things, I would say, sorry, you done this, you must face it, or face the victims, yeah, and then reconcile, beg for forgiveness. They'll decide whether to forgive you or to push it all the way. And this is the basis of my advocate analysis or advocate advances today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lamin Tamba.
Yeah.
Without wasting much time now, I'll move over to Lawyer Solomon Demba, who is going to be speaking against the motion. Mr. Demba, just like Lamin Tamba, I will set the clock, and once you get to 9 minutes, you'll hear this sound for 3 times, and then once you get to 10 minutes, you'll hear the same sound continuously. Then that would be an indication for you to wrap up and end your presentation. For now, the floor is yours, Lawyer Demba.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm grateful. Hello, Gambians. Hello, everyone at home. This is an important moment. Hello, I thank the Gunjur Online, my colleagues, Mr. Tamba and Mr. Sarr, for appearing today to engage in these important debates. These debates are important. They are important so that our society can move forward. And for me, my motion, I'm speaking against the motion on the basis that, the purpose of a transitional justice is to establish peace and stability. Without justice, we can never establish peace. why I speak against the motion is very clear. Justice requires us as individuals, as a state, to punish those who bear the greatest responsibility of inflicting serious harm on innocent citizens for no justification. At the material time, these were citizens who were not combatant enemies. Of course, there is a place for reconciliation in the administration of justice. We all know that. But a reconciliation is only succeeded in the context of justice if the victim feel that they are valued and if we provide effective remedy for the victims. And if a justice that can restore public trust, public confidence in the state, that is a justice that requires to punish those people who bear the greatest responsibility of inflicting harm on innocent citizens. A justice that can bring the society together, that can give us a vision, is a justice that requires us to punish those who inflict serious harm on citizens. And it's also important, a justice that is able to prevent past human or future human rights violation. We all know what happened in the world, even if you look back, if you remember the Second World War. After those war, what happened? The Allies paraded those people who committed serious crime against humanity, against individuals. They were criminally prosecuted. We do not want to be apologists. Neither we want to be hardcore criminal or what we want is a justice. And that justice, in my view, can only be delivered if we punish those people who inflict serious harm on innocent citizens. Prevention of future occurrence is important when it comes to protection of fundamental human rights. The effect of law, or the purpose of the law, is to command and prohibit. Command in a way that organized society, prohibit a conduct that is harmful to other fellow human beings. What is crucially important, in fact, within the social contract doctrine, all citizens have taken a position that we would not inflict harm on other citizens. So if they violate, if they breach those terms, of course they must feel the full force of the law, and that can only be done through criminal prosecution, in my view. Of course, we all know the never again doctrine, or the doctrine of never again. If we fail to punish those people who inflict serious harm on citizens, in my view, the doctrine of never again will be regarded as fantasy doctrine of never again. Why criminal prosecutions? Criminal prosecutions are important in a society, because in a society we all live together. We say that there are certain rules that are set we must abide by. We cannot flout those rules and think that actually we can get away with that. Of course, it would mean that we also respect people's rights, defendants, people who were alleged to have committed those crimes. We cannot try them by media, certainly. That is wrong. And their right must be protected. And they must be seen innocent until proven guilty. But that does not mean that we should just adopt apologetic approach to them to say that, well, for the sake of reconciliation, we're just going to walk away and then sort of forget and reconcile. In fact, reconciliation is two-way street. The way it succeeds is for people to feel it. People would not feel reconciliation when it's imposed on them. So it's important that we take a due process. But this is also very important in the sense of rule of law. You know, as I said in my earlier deliberation, to say that the point of law is to command and prohibit. Prohibition of harmful conduct is an important purpose of the law. And that is fundamental to rule of law. Without punishing, or if the law is unavailable to punish widespread brutality that has been inflicted on citizens, then in fact the authority of the law would be vitiated. So we have a collective responsibility to ensure, and that collective responsibility is extended to even to the perpetrators who were alleged to have committed something. If they can come forward and say, you know what, here is it, I put my hands up, I'm going to serve my term. That may be a way forward. That may be seen as something that's genuine. The rule of law principle also extends to the principle of democracy. In order to have confidence in the state and the citizens to have trust in the state, it must be seen that serious crimes are punished. The idea that we can reconcile and forget about is a flawed idea. It's something that will not serve the greater interests of the society. Of course, in Gambia, we are all interconnected. And it is the fact that in sometimes some of these things, historical injustice do lead to human rights have some connection or nexus with human rights violations. We know. Of course, we have to address those. But criminal prosecution, what it will bring about judicial confirmation of the fact. Because why judicial confirmation of the fact is important than the true commissions? We all know the true commissions. I mean, of course, they have a role in the transitional justice. But we know there are limitations. We know what they are able to do. They are different to a judicial confirmation of the fact, where you have fearless advocates defending the defendant's right, putting forward the case for the victim. That system, that is what is capable of addressing the issue of serious human rights violation. Of course, in Gambia, we all know we are interconnected. And the society, to some respect, has provided a lot of things in place that allow us to resolve our what is different to criminal prosecution. The important thing here, what we need to focus on, is the idea that we cannot reconcile when peace is not established, when justice is not delivered. The idea that the victims are going to walk away and said, well, actually, I have forgotten, is an idea that is likely to create a recipe for another future conflict. We know if the state has no ability or the state fails to prosecute serious harm against innocent citizens, we know the result of that. That could lead to mob justice. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the way forward is to prosecute those who bear the greatest responsibility. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm grateful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Demba. That was Lawyer Demba speaking against the motion. So what we are gonna do now is this is the end of the first segment. We're going to be taking a break shortly, and when we come back, we'll have the second segment, and the second segment would be rebuttal. So basically, anything that either side has said, the other side would have an opportunity to rebut it, and also the other side would also have an opportunity to reinforce anything that they have said earlier. But we'll do that when we come back. And also when we come back, like I've said, there was a preliminary vote that has taken place. When we come back, I will announce the results of the preliminary vote. And as explained at the start, the preliminary vote serves as the baseline. And whichever side convinces, or whichever side does better than where they started from, on the basis of the preliminary voting, would be the winner of tonight's debate. So we'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll go into the next segment.
Sponsor a Gambian girl through SAG Foundation. We are placing girls on the path to success through education. Our aim is to realize a Gambia where every girl is given equal access to education to reach their full potential. This is how we do it through our model of affecting generational systematic change. This is Amy. She is not in school, an underprivileged girl excluded from school due to lack of financial support. The SAG Foundation enrolled her into school, and she is equipped with all the essential resources to have a quality education. Amy is now making a difference in her community. Amy is now contributing towards the generational systematic change. Education changes everything for a girl.
That one day, Yahya Jammeh will be compelled to account for his reign of 22 years of terror.
It would be easy for me to say we kill him, but then we will be just like him. The TRRC process is on. People are hearing for themselves, literally, directly from the victims and the perpetrators, what's been done to them, the victims, and what has been done to them by the perpetrators. We are hearing from both sides. People who literally commit serious crimes are coming out and saying, I, Mr. So-and-so, went and did the A, B, C, D, E, and yes, I got instructions from Yahya and his gang. This is not hearsay anymore, such and such. Opposition are the ones who are, propaganda, or journalists are doing their fake stuff. No, this is the reality TV finally. People are hearing directly from the source. So all I want to see when this process is all said and done is only one thing and one thing: justice for the victims and their families. That is it.
Thank you very much. We're back, and this is the start of the second segment. Like I said, before I start, what I'll do is I'll announce the preliminary results. But before I do, you will shortly see them on the screen. Preliminary results would shortly come on the screen. And what we have is, as you know, the question or the motion was, we should reconcile rather than seek the prosecution of Jammeh and others. So we have 64.3% that voted in favor of that motion. And against the motion, we have 32 or 31.5%. And there were a number of people that were undecided, and that accounted for 4.2%. So that is the baseline, and that is the preliminary results. I know the screen is not coming up very clear, but in that case, I'll repeat the results again, the preliminary results. For yes in favor of the motion, we have 64.3%. Against the motion, we have 31.5%. And undecided was 4.2%. So that is the baseline. So either side, or each of the any of the sides that does better than their preliminary position, when we come to the final voting, at the end of their closing remarks, there will be a link that will be shared, and the live audience would be able to cast their vote when that time comes. Okay, so that is all. That's it now. So we'll now move on to the next phase of the debate, which is going to be the rebuttals. And for the rebuttals, each side will have 5 minutes to rebut anything that was said by the other side, or they can also use the 5 minutes to reinforce their position and their message. So the floor is now open, and the speaker for the motion would be Colonel Sarr. The floor is yours. Just like I have said, Colonel Sarr, earlier, once you get to 4 minutes, you will hear this sound. And once your 5 minutes is up, you'll hear the same sound continuously, and then you can just start wrapping up at that point. The floor is yours now, Colonel Sarr.
Oh, thank you very much. First, Gunjur Online, thank you very much for inviting me. For Sambou Junior, for the invitation. My colleagues, Mr. Tamba and Mr. Demba, and everybody. I want to go straight to the point because I don't want to use my minutes for too long. So, all protocol observed. I am for the motion that we should reconcile, because I am a typical example of a reconciliator. I mean, I reconcile with Jammeh. And, in the beginning, I feel a little bit apprehensive about the whole setup, in that the moderator introduced the whole debate as like with 22 years of dictatorship, gross human rights, violations, that set a tone of some kind of biasness, which I think when you went further in the end, in our break, you brought radicals who are really opposed to reconciliation, and they were brought the other side who would have also told you perhaps something different. You should have looked for people who would say differently to balance it. But, all right. But then having said that, you gave a vote that reflects the sentiment of the country right now. You said when they voted, it was like 64.3 said yes, 31.2 no, and about 4.2 undecided. In the beginning, when the TRRC started, if you had gone through a vote like that, it probably would have showed different figures. Probably 64% would have said no, and 31% said yes. You know why? Because the idea of the TRRC and all this investigation was conceived on a wrong premise. I was at the UN, Mohammed Ibn Chambers, who was part of the whole negotiators who brought economic in the country, first told me that Gambia needs TRRC. And I told him, well, I don't think we need it, because I was an insider. I went through it. I know the culture in the Gambia. I know where it is leading to. It might even turn very tribal, which it did eventually. That's what I see now, the tribal factor of all the reconciliation. I don't see it being really honest and straightforward, because and everything that was put at the UN about coming to the Gambia, the invasion factor. Yeah, Jammeh has MFDC rebels, Casamas rebels, his people, control of the army, the security, they are killing people everywhere, which was not true. They came in, they saw nothing of that sort. Yeah, all the officers in the armed forces are Jolas who have been promoted to very high ranks. The rest are, oppressed and forgotten, which was not true again. So, I mean, when the TRRC came in, I was impressed in the beginning, and I thought it was going to be a reasonable, genuine investigation. But over time, I saw it develop into selective justice, if I say, because this is like prosecution. Esafal is a formidable international prosecutor, using all his skills to bully the weak, and give pass to whom he feels are cool people. I could give you examples of even recent, like the case of Samsudeen in particular. He came there and had a clean pass, as if he was the greatest man who has ever happened to come and fight Jammeh's administration, which I thought was not treated fairly, in that when Gorgimbu, the police officer, came and said that, and came and talked about the April 10, 11 demonstration, Esafal bullied him, bastardized him, told him that you are the most cruel, brutal person to survive in this country. Hey, Tamsir Jassi was the security advisor to the police of the whole Gambia. And I understand he was actively involved in the April 11, 10 uprising. Not a single question was asked to this guy about what happened. And he was just there telling things that did not add up at all, because we know what happened. What he was telling is very inconsistent and untrue. So the fact that I could list from now on to the next 2 hours everything that I saw turning the TRRC more into a witch hunt than a real, actual truth-seeking activity or venture with the intention of reconciling the country, because the country is not being reconciled, and the effect of thinking that it was going to diminish the popularity of Jammeh is the reverse. It's making him more popular because they see things going wrong. Okay, thank you. It's been too short. I hate this. I wish I could get another 10 minutes to go into but thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you very much, Colonel. That was Colonel Sarr speaking for the motion. Now we'll move across to Lawyer Solomon Demba for his rebuttals, or for him to reinforce anything that he's said earlier, or reinforce his message. Solomon, the same rules apply again with regards to when your time is up. So for now, the floor is yours.
I am grateful for giving me this opportunity once again to speak on behalf of many Gambians. Obviously, we do know the result now is the preliminary result. But what I can tell you, it is the fact that we need to look at the context of what is reconciliation. It does not mean forgiving people who inflict serious harm and who bear the greatest responsibility for inflicting those harm. It excludes those people. There are people at a minor level involvement. Yes, there might be an opportunity for that. So this maybe it needs to be more clear. But going back, I mean, the points that I want to address particularly where Mr. Sarr pointed out to the TRRC, his lack of faith in TRRC suggests to me then judicial process is the best suitable process, which is the criminal prosecution of the defendants. Because the TRRC may be seen as a one-man or a lone counsel's proceeding where you don't have another counsel to challenge the counsel for his assertions or for his sort of examination or cross-examination of witness. But a judicial proceeding would allow that. So I'll say to him, he is leaning towards or against the motion. In terms of the ADR, alternate dispute resolution mentioned by Mr. Tamba, it's quite an interesting concept, but that is usually deployed in civil proceedings, in civil dispute matters. But people who commit serious criminality, that means harming someone for no good reason, the best way to deal with that is to put them through criminal proceeding. In fact, you are doing a favor for them to some respect. You are giving them the right for their right to be defended, to be well defended, rather than to be tortured or to be ill-treated by a lone counsel, if you feel so. So the ADR, that is actually beyond the level of criminality we are talking about here. So, fellow Gambians, as I said, in my view, in Gambia, we all reconcile with one another. We do. And reconciliation is part and parcel of justice, administration of justice. But it's the context in which it's delivered. That is fundamental. We need to understand that. Those who inflict serious harm, serious brutality on innocent citizens, I think the only place for them to be dealt with is in the court, a proper competent court where their rights are protected. And in fact, this will provide some sense of justice for victims, family, but also it is the case that we are part of the international community. There are certain obligations that we have. Those obligations emanate from the international treaties that we have acceded to. So we have an obligation to protect those. So we cannot forgive people for serious crime that that would lead to Gambia breaching its international obligations. We can reconcile to some level, but it means the perpetrators have to come forward and also face the music. So it is my position that the criminal proceedings are the most effective and fair and balanced way of dealing with serious past human rights violations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawyer Demba. So that brings us to the end of this segment. The next segment would be the question and answer session. One thing I forgot to cover at the start. I hope you'll pardon me. I am not a media person. I'm just trying my best. I forgot to, and I do apologize to my studio guests. I seriously do apologize. I forgot to introduce the studio guests at the start, but I'll just do that now. We invited 5 of them, but 3 of them have turned up. And the studio guests, ladies first, we have Fatoumata Jawo from the Gambia Bar Association. She's a young lawyer from the Gambia Bar Association. And we also have Mr. John Charles Njie, who is who leads the civil society organization in the Gambia. If I am wrong, Mr. Njie, do correct me when you come on to ask your question. I seriously apologize in advance. And the third person is Mr. Mohamed Dabo. And Mr. Mohamed Dabo is, I believe, either the head or the deputy of the Gambia or the University of the Gambia Students Union. So, Mr. Dabo, again, just like I said with Mr. Njie, please feel free to correct me if I get any of that that incorrect. I'm sure all three of you have tough questions for the guests, because as you can hear, Colonel Sarr was saying he wanted to speak more. So I am hoping you have a question. You have a question for him, so he can have more time to speak, because I'm sure he has a lot to say. So, but just to recap this point again for the studio guests. When we come back, if you have any questions, I'm sure you do, we'll bring you on, and the rule is just for balance. You ask one question to both sides. What we'll do is you'll ask your question to one side first and allow them to answer. If you have a follow-on question from what they have said, that is allowed. Then after that, you ask your question to the other side. Same again, if there's a follow-on question, that would be allowed as well. So we can do that for all three of you. In fact, when we come to the next segment, I think, I'm not sure whether the producer can do that. If the producer can bring all of us on the screen, so that we can make it more interactive. And those of you that are watching as well, if you have any questions, please do write them in the comment box. I'll try to pick up as many of your questions as I can, and ask the speakers to address your questions. But I would please ask if you can ensure, please. This is just an ask. I'm not actually instructing. I'm just asking if you could please focus your questions to the subject of the debate, and not make it too personal, because all we are trying to do here is we're just trying to have a conversation. Obviously, there's a difference in opinion on both sides, but I'm sure we can handle that disagreement or that diversity in opinion in a very civil manner, and hopefully we'll all learn something from each other. That is the objective. So now what we'll do is we'll go for our next short break. Then when we come back, we'll move on to the question and answer session. Thank you. Okay, it looks like, I'm not sure what's happening. We're supposed to be having a break now, Mr. Jammeh. Can we go for a short break, and then when we come back, we can start the next section, the next segment?
Sponsor a Gambian girl through SAG Foundation. We are placing girls on the path to success through education. Our aim is to realize a Gambia where every girl is given equal access to education to reach their full potential. This is how we do it through our model of affecting generational systematic change. This is Amy. She is not in school, an underprivileged girl excluded from school due to lack of financial support. The SAG Foundation enrolled her into school, and she is equipped with all the essential resources to have a quality education. Amy is now making a difference in her community. Amy is now contributing towards the generational systematic change. Education changes everything for a girl.
you very much and welcome back. As you know, this is the third segment, so we are going to be taking questions. Like I said, those of you that are watching live, if you have any questions, send them to, just write them down in the comment box. At this stage, I think we'll bring on our studio guests to the screen so that all of us are on the screen. I believe that is something that can be done. Yes, just whilst we are waiting for the studio guests to appear on the screen.
Yeah.
Whilst we're waiting for that, just to say this session is going to be on for half an hour.
Yeah.
So I believe all the studio guests are on. Mr. Jammeh, I can only see one of them.
He did say Mr. Dabo will be on audio only.
Oh, Mr. Dabo would be on audio only. How about Mr. Njie? Okay, okay. It looks like we're having some technical difficulties with the other two. But once they come back, we'll bring them on. So, so Fatou Jao, I believe you have questions for the speakers.
Hello.
Yes, Fatou Jao, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Do you have any questions for the speakers?
Yeah, I have one question, but I am trying to figure out the second question for the other side, so maybe I will need a minute.
I think we're having difficulty hearing your hearing you.
You cannot hear me?
It's better now.
Yes, it's slightly better now. Yes.
Yeah, I was saying I have one question already formulated, so I am working on the second question because I don't want it to be bad. Like you said, I have to ask you a question.
Yes, no, that's fine. You can ask the question that you have now, and then later on you can bring in your question for the other side.
Okay. My question goes to the person for the motion.
Yeah.
You spoke about the issue of reconciliation as opposed to prosecution.
Yeah.
So just to bear in mind, what would be your reaction if one comes up and say, if the Gambia reconciles and not prosecute Jammeh and others, but the international community can choose to prosecute them for crimes against humanity for sure, because the Gambia is part of the ICC. So, what will be your reaction to that?
Samsar, you want to go or you want me to go?
I can go.
Okay, you go because you had less time than me, and then I can come in at some point.
Yes. The question is, what about if the international community come with some kind of a hybrid court to prosecute Jammeh? What we should say?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, I suppose the question is, yes, you are saying we should reconcile, but what if the international community decides that they are going to prosecute for crimes against humanity?
Since Gambia is part of
no, I don't see that in fact happening at all, because unless we want to take a very funny route pursued by our hardliners, because after all, if America, for instance, Britain just recently going against ICC, prosecuting war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the America, Trump clearly told ICC, if you come here, you have a problem with me. And America, I know, will never accept that. So, I mean, like, that is not a very solid argument to pursue, because I don't see that gaining any traction, because people will fight it. I will stand and fight that seriously and say it will be a double standard to give a pass to places like America, England, that grief more dirty, Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo Bay, gross human rights violations. Why do we let them go and want to just focus on small Gambia in a case that they don't know the implications? Because there are so many implications, just like what Mr. Tamba said, that the person, they say, oh, this crime was committed against this person, but nobody stopped to ask, what did he do to deserve being treated like that? Because if you tell me now that I called some Gambians to Dakar, pay them money to go and destabilize the country in the name of peaceful demonstration, when we know demonstrations have brought down governments like in the Arab Spring, and then want me to accept that as a normal, perfect way of exercising your rights or human rights, I will question your sanity. And if you organize a coup d'etat and come and try to shoot me, and I shoot you, and you think that was a human rights, I was exercising my human rights, that also I question your sanity. Because the very people who attempted to attack the government of the Gambia in December 30th, 2014, and got killed in the process, are here now investigating the government about what they have done wrong in the country. Those people can never be fair judges or investigators. So all those things have undermined whatever we are pursuing towards trying to get the government of the APRC prosecuted for anything. And I can tell you this, lady, any case that you can bring before me about what had happened before that question, the human rights violation of that government, the APRC government, I can give you a reason why it happened. And if you are not very dogmatic in your assessment of my situation, you will understand that it was justifiable. Look at what happened in the capital 2 days ago on 6th of January. When that police officer stood there and saw these people breaking the grate, and he had that rifle, the gun cocked, ready to shoot, they were saying that, oh, he has a gun, he has a gun. But there was this woman who insisted on breaking into that Capitol building. When they broke it open, he opened fire. Now, what is the difference? That is like you are protecting the temple of democracy. And sometimes to protect a government and a temple of democracy, or any government, lives could be taken, lives could be wasted, people could be injured, and anything can happen. So you don't treat that as a normal, everyday crime. Like my fellow doctor said, Dr. Solomon, that, when criminals commit crimes, they should be prosecuted. Yes, I know, but states, they commit crime and get away with it. If America can commit crime, and it's not, they understand that it happens. And one more thing before I close, and that is, we cannot continue this pattern of trying to bring justice in the country, because I don't understand the rationale behind, for instance, taking the 9 of the NIA prosecuted for 26 days, victims of the UDP who were demonstrating, and in the process, one died, and paid them $53 million so far in a case that has been dragging for almost 4 years. And you still thinking about compensating or reparation, and these guys don't have a dime. They are crying about their poverty, and you see it makes sense. No, to me, it doesn't.
I think yes. Thank you very much, Colonel. Thank you very much, Colonel, and Fatou Diaw, thank you very much for your question. Whenever you want to bring in your next one, you can bring it up. But for now, we have a question for you, Mr. Demba. The question is from Mohammed Tekani, and the question is on the screen, but I'll read it out. What it says is, question for lawyer Demba. Counsel stated that serious crimes must be prosecuted, which I want to believe is supposed to be universal. Therefore, I want to ask if documented crimes by President Bush, Obama, Bill Clinton, and Trump and Prime Minister Tony Blair for war crimes in Iraq, Libya, and Iran are serious crimes? That's the first question. If yes, why are they not prosecuted? And if no, why shouldn't they be prosecuted? That's for you, Mr. Demba.
Yes, I'm grateful for your question. I think it's an important question, really. And of course, as I said, rightly, which you agree with me, the serious crimes should be prosecuted. Any crime committed by anyone in the world should be prosecuted if there are competent courts constituted to prosecute them. Of course, we know sometimes politics do get away or do sort of come on way of administration of justice. Sometimes that happens. So if crimes were committed by Tony Blair and there is a competent court to oversee those proceedings or to hear those proceedings, so be it. They should be prosecuted, in my view, and I think you agree with that. The reason why they are not, one may take a view that there haven't been enough evidence to establish that, unless if you have a set of evidence to show or to make a reference to a particular authority that affirm those. Because if that is the case, then whoever has the competency must follow them. No one should be above the law, but of course, sometimes politics do affect law, the administration of justice. So, I am with a view on you to say all crimes must be prosecuted, because let's look at this from a perspective of what is the purpose of a law in a society. It's one, to organize society, which I said earlier on, but also to ensure that we live harmoniously as citizens with one another. We are not required to inflict harms on other citizens without any reason. So if these crimes were committed by Tony Blair, which you allege they committed by Tony Blair and Bush, and there are competent courts that are constituted to see those proceedings, so be it. But the problem, as I said, if there has not been any evidence or competent court, or if the evidence are very speculative, then I take a view that, then it will be impossible to bring them to justice. Thank you. Mohammed, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Demba. I'm just scrolling through the comments now. I think there is a question for Lamin Tamba, which I'm trying to find. But yeah, because there's quite a few comments, because the response to this debate has been overwhelming. There's a question for Lamin Tamba, Mr. Jammeh, if you can spot it. I'm not sure whether you have spotted it. I note one. I cannot recall the name exactly, but I saw a question for Lamin Tamba, which I think I have lost now. But 1 second, okay, now we have another question. In the meantime, there's one question from, no, but I think this is for Mr. Demba, because I want to ask something to the other side just to keep it balanced now. So yeah, Mr. Jammeh, if you spot the question for Lamin Tamba before I do, feel free to bring it up. Otherwise, I'll try and find it. And okay, there's this question for Lamin Tamba. It's from Pa Famara Baji. In fact, it's two questions for Lamin Tamba. It's from Pa Famara Baji, two questions. I'll read them out before they come up to the screen. Lamin Tamba. The first one is, well, I think I can skip the first one, but I'll ask it anyway. If you feel free to answer it if you want.
Go ahead.
Okay, we have a different question for you, which is on the screen now. Does Lamin Tamba hold the belief that the allegations against Jammeh should be quashed without any investigation and legal prosecution? If so, why?
Well, before I go into answering that question, I want to clarify two things. One is Mr. Demba's assumption that alternative dispute resolution only applies to civil cases. No, I'm talking from the cultural perspective of our country. Before, in our country, we try and resolve stuff in a family. If it doesn't work, it goes to the alcalo. If it doesn't work, it goes to the chief. That's how we used to resolve stuff in community. That's alternative dispute resolution, because we had common law in the Gambia all through the colonial period. If it does get to the colonial masters, then they look at it via common law, you go to court. But we used to resolve these disputes without going to court. So our own traditional way of resolving cases was alternative system, just like we call our own medicine alternative medicine. The same thing we were doing. So if you come to the modern one, mainstream or Western law or common law as we see it today, yes, alternative dispute resolution goes a different way instead of criminal. So, but I'm talking about cultural. In fact, my advocacy started with the cultural setting, and then I took that to our constitution. And indeed, even our constitution doesn't indemnify small players, but indemnifies the Gambian president in Section 69. Although it says official duties, but when you're a president or a minister, official duties can suddenly turn into a 24-hour thing and cover a range of stuff. No, the allegations against Jammeh, I would say this, and I've said this on Freedom Radio, I've said it on other platforms, by all means, investigate them if you want. You can investigate the allegations, but what I can tell you, if we go by the same Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, 1997, it does state categorically clear the junta period and after the junta period. So Schedule 2, paragraph 13, so paragraph 1 to 5, or paragraph 13, subsections 1 to 5. If you look at it, it gives the junta total immunity. So we can investigate because obviously we want to know the facts and then we can record them for history or historic purposes. Until maybe one day we decide to do something else. You cannot instigate any action against the junta as it stands. And the Constitution definitely states that any tribunal, court, or commission set up to investigate the junta must never be entertained. That's the first line, should not entertain. So let's leave the junta aside. Let's go to Section 69, which is probably where a lot of things that Mr. Demba is talking about, because the junta was ruled by decree. So rule by decree doesn't care what international conventions are there, which again covers a little bit of what Ms. Jao asked. What about the international community stepping in? There are international conventions, all of them in fact, recognize the personal immunity that every president, every head of state, and every diplomat holds. That must not be waived. And we've seen recently in the United Kingdom, diplomatic immunity covering an alleged murderer. We've seen that. And that diplomatic immunity, the UK court said that diplomatic immunity cannot be lifted. And that's the same diplomatic immunity via international convention that covers presidents and prime ministers or other heads of state. So when we have the junta which ruled by decree, we didn't have a constitution at the time. The junta or rule by decree rarely subscribes to any international convention. They rule with instinct. Whatever comes, they decree it and it happens. So let's forget the junta, because as far as I'm concerned, legally, at the moment, we have nothing to deal with the junta. You can investigate, there's nothing wrong with it. My problem is, in any jurisprudence, in any legal system in the world, Sambou Jr. is in England, Mr. Demba or lawyer Demba is probably in England. I don't know where he's practicing. But in this country, even if there's the faintest of links between the person that's investigating and the person that's being investigated, either in favor of or against the person that's being investigated, they'll kick you out of the investigation. So in this country, when Grenfell Tower fire occurred a few years ago, there was a judge that was picked to head the inquiry. that judge had never had any relations with Grenfell Tower or the company that supplied the cladding, the fireproof thing for the Grenfell Tower. The faintest relationship he had to do with the former Prime Minister, Theresa May. So he had no direct relations with Grenfell Tower or the company that put that cladding on that tower. The faintest relationship he had was he had business dealings with the former Prime Minister of England when that fire occurred. So they basically disqualified him straight away from sitting there, let alone sitting people on TRRC who's openly admitted to writing malicious stories against Jammeh, who openly admitted to heading to the Gambia to try and shoot him and kill him and overthrow his government. People whose daughters openly plotted to overthrow Jammeh or kill him. People who actually hosting witnesses at TRRC. This is my problem from the beginning. The chairperson, executive secretary of TRRC, Mr. Jallo, had beef with Jammeh, direct beef, including writing false stories against Jammeh. The deputy chairman of TRRC, Deputy Source, has a daughter who's openly confessed to plotting or doing things against Jammeh. You have somebody who was part of December 30 who picked up guns to go and kill and overthrow Jammeh. So by all means, investigate. But what you can do from 1996 until 21 January 2017, when Jammeh left office, you can investigate him, but you cannot instigate any legal action against him. So what you can do, you can chase the small players and take them to court. But Jammeh himself, who you're talking about, is currently covered. If you want to use Bartambedu's language, those who bear the greatest responsibility, you can only bring that command responsibility if anyone died in the hands of the state, because whether you believe it or not, most of these crimes, if not 99%, 100% of them, were committed by state agents. These are not personal issues. The state can commit crimes and get away with it. Indeed, 2 months ago, the United Kingdom House of Lords endorsed killing, raping, torturing to protect the state. All right? United States has been doing that throughout history. They had no right to go to Vietnam. They had no right to go to Afghanistan. They had no right to go to Libya. They had no right to go to Iraq. They had no right to assassinate the Iranian general on foreign soil, but they've done that. Nobody's going to instigate that legal action. King Leopold, the biggest killer of African people, Congolese, 5 million, some saying 10 million, some paying 15 million. How come the international community are not posthumously charging those people and criminalizing them, but they're still chasing the Nazis from 1949, 1945 actually, 39 to 45. But they're not talking about other people. So yes, you can investigate Jammeh and go after the small players, but Section 69 of our Constitution says Jammeh or Jawara or Barrow cannot be investigated or cannot have any legal action taken against them for things they did or didn't do when they were in office. So therefore, we're not going to posthumously charge Jawara. We're not going to charge Jammeh. We're not going to charge Barrow until we change those provisions in our Constitution. So you can investigate Jammeh, fine. You can do whatever, but for him, it'll be a kind of record keeping, or you go after the small players rather than the president himself. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Just to say, we only have half an hour for this section. If we can keep our comments concise so that everybody will have an opportunity. I think Mr. Njie is back on. Mr. John Charles Njie for Civil Society. He's back on. I think he wants to bring something up for Mr. Tamba. I know, Mr. Demba, there's not there are not many questions coming up for yourself, but at any point, if you want to respond to anything that has been said by the other side, please
let me respond to. Let me pick up from where Mr. Tamba stayed. Anyway, I think it's a.
Okay, Mr. Demba, 1 second. 1 second. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring Mr. Njie in because I understand we are having technical problems with him. He's coming on and off just before he goes.
Right.
I bring him in. Then after he's finished, you can come on. Then after that, we have another question from Famara Baji. Mr. Njie, come in. Do we still have Mr. Njie? John Charles Njie? Okay, we may have lost him again.
Okay.
Okay, so Solomon, I'll let you come in for now. Mr. Njie, whenever you come up, just alert me.
Yeah, I'll be very brief anyway. In fact, I just in response to Mr. Tamba sort of attach on that actually immunity, state immunity actually protects or a head of state. Of course, to an extent. But in fact, I'll reference you to the case of Pinochet. It's quite a popular case, I'm sure, if you are following reading. The state immunity was displaced to actually for violation of serious human rights violation. What is it on international arena? Human rights violation, there are preemptive norms. There are norms that you cannot contract yourself out of. It is laughable. And in fact, it's a mockery of the law and offensive for anyone to craft something just to protect yourself for a crime that you know you are going to commit. And in fact, in many cases, that could be a premeditation of your willingness to commit that crime. It is not the case. It's a misconceived misunderstanding of the law to think that state immunity could be used as a shield against serious human rights violation. That is wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to clarify. And also the other point that you make reference to the recent case, which was a road traffic accident. That's entirely different. Law is not static. Law is a living instrument, meaning that law has to be interpreted in a way that protects the fundamental interests of the society. It is your interest and everyone's interest and the society interest for citizens to be protected. It doesn't matter who that person is. And that is the point of the law. The idea that you could put a flimsy provision in a constitution to protect yourself is likely to fall on its face in a proper, competent court. That's what happened in House of Law. If you remember Pinochet case, that is the point of international law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Demba. We have another question for Lamin Tamba, but we will bring it on for Colonel Sarr because Colonel Sarr has not spoken for quite some time. There's one question for your side, but before that, I think we have one from Fatu Jao. Fatu Jao, the floor is yours.
Yeah, this might not be a question. It's just a point that I feel like I need to clarify. And it's when Tamba was making his submission, he mentioned about Section 69 of the Constitution. I just have an obligation to clarify something here because it's relating to legal issues. And I want to refer him to Section 69, subsection 3B. So the immunity that you're talking about, actually, it's when you are a president. But if you are an ex-president, with a vote of the National Assembly, you can be prosecuted in criminal cases. So I wanted to clarify that it's not like you don't, as an ex-president, you cannot be asking for any court. Because for the record, I might read it for the people here.
Yeah.
That is Section 69, subsection 3B. It reads that a criminal court shall only have jurisdiction to entertain proceedings against him or her, that is the president or the ex-president, in respect of an act or omission alleged to have been perpetrated by him or her while holding office as president if the National Assembly has resolved on a motion supported by not less than 2/3 of all the members.
Yeah.
Yes, in public interest. So we can say in a nutshell, if the National Assembly decides to vote that let an ex-president be prosecuted based on crimes he has committed or allegedly has committed, then there is really a legal basis.
All right.
I wanted to.
I'll come in there. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. In fact,
but just briefly.
Yeah, just briefly, quickly. in fact, Sambou and I has had this conversation saying that if the coalition was focused, those were the first amendments they would have done, or the first acts in government if they were serious about prosecuting the alleged crimes under Jammeh. You can amend Section 69 by a 2/3 majority or more in Parliament. But this Parliament wasn't interested in that. But we'll go there later. I agree with Fatou Jaw 100%. A motion of Parliament and a vote of more than 2/3 would have changed that in Parliament. So this Parliament could have done that. But right now, the Parliament is so divided, they can't do that. And the next government that comes, because Barrow himself will benefit from this same Section 69, just like the ex-president, 2 ex-presidents benefited from it. Thank you very much. I agree with that 100%.
Okay, yeah, just to clarify, I don't think the vote would be to amend. The vote would be to revoke the immunity.
Yeah.
Yes. To revoke, yeah.
To revoke
at any time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Yes, I think at this point we have another question, but this one we let Colonel Sarr come in. Mr. Jammeh, I think there's a question for Famara Baji?
Yeah.
Yes,
he's
okay.
asking
The question,
but we let Samsar have that question.
We let Colonel Sarr come in for this one because he's not spoken for quite some time. The question is whether Jammeh is willing to come to the TRRC. That's the first one. The second one is, will he be ready to apologize to the victims for the sake of national reconciliation?
All right, that's it. First, I don't know about the first question. I don't know because that.
Do you not speak to Jammeh then?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't speak to Jammeh at all. I'm not.
Okay.
Even when I was at the UN, I did not.
We thought both you and Tamba have direct communication with Jammeh on a daily basis.
To be honest with
that's
you,
what we thought. But yes,
talking out of my conscience and my understanding of what has evolved through this history of what we had in the past 22 years, because I was
okay. So the first question, we can skip that one. Now the next question is, will Jammeh be ready to apologize to the victims for the sake of national reconciliation? Because obviously you are advancing a case that we should reconcile, but will he be willing to apologize for the sake of reconciliation?
If it is established beyond doubt that these victims are actual victims who deserve apology, I have no doubt in my mind that he will. But establishing that reality is what is the sticking point now, because the way the victim, those who are claiming victimhood, in many cases, show me some level of discredited testimonies, which I believe should be looked into seriously. Taking the case of even the jugglers, whom I think established the most damning things about Jammeh's regime, where people who were rounded up, immediately after the transition or immediately after the change of government, rounded them up, took them to mile 2. You did not charge them, give them nothing. You playing the same nonsense. If you think Jammeh was playing nonsense, that was the same nonsense. No rights, nothing. Lock them up for 3 years and call them one day and say, we are bringing you before a panel called TRRC. They probably didn't even know that TRRC existed. All you have to do is come and tell us this is what happened, done by Jammeh or ordered by Jammeh, and you will go home. And those who said yes, they will do it, they came and did the same thing and they went home. Those who say they had nothing to do with that are still in jail. And you want to tell me that there is a logical establishment or reasonable establishment of victimhood here? I doubt it. So the gray area here is, look, if you can give me genuine evidence, call me. When you say Samsar did this, you call Samsar and say, did you do it? And listen to my version before you come to a conclusion. Then I will, and you do that, then I will understand. But if you just say Samsar did this when I know Samsar did not, and you never give me, even Samsar, the opportunity to come and explain what I did different from what that person said, and you draw a conclusion and say that was a victim of Samsar, then that is baloney to me. I'm not going. I don't think Jammeh will apologize for those conditions. And if he wants to, I will tell him, no, don't do it.
Yeah. Just to add, can I add a little bit there?
No, Mr. Tamba. I don't think that would be fair to Mr. Demba,
Right.
because Mr. Demba is on his own. So what we'll do now is, I think Fatou Jao wants to come in on this question. So yes, Fatou Jao, the floor is yours. After that, Mr. Demba, we have a question for you. We'll try and find it.
Yeah, I think our role is not only to ask questions, but we also have maybe an obligation on observations on certain issues that might be helpful to all the parties.
Yes, sure. It's informal. Yeah, sure. Feel free. Yeah.
So this thing is not really about trying to add on to anything on any point for somebody, or trying to ask a question to a particular party, but I'm just trying to make something, just an observation, okay? So regarding the immunity, it's a general comment. There is a Supreme Court decision already that talks about that Schedule 2, there is a clause for the Section 13 that gives the members of the junta some form of immunity. But as far as the decision of the Supreme Court is concerned, it only, and even the Constitution says it limits to official duty. Let us not miss that point as well. Yeah. So anything that was outside the official functions of the junta, you cannot say it's covered by the immunity. Yeah. And if my memory would serve me right, because I'm talking on top of my head, the case would be Jammeh, I think, and the state or the attorney general, where the Supreme Court held that part of that Section 13 is even unconstitutional, because the way it was incorporated in the Constitution, that means the process of amending the Constitution to incorporate that part of the immunity was not really followed. So as a result, it is in the Constitution, but it is of no effect legally. Yeah. So, and it's the highest court right now. Whatever decision that they take, it's something that another court cannot deviate from unless they review their own decision. But as we speak, that is what is happening. So just to bear that.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatou Jao. We'll get a question for Mr. Demba. I think we have a question for Humble Melter for Mr. Demba. The question is, if Ghana can reconcile with J.J. Rawlings, former president, why not Jammeh?
Well, Mr. Cisse, I'm grateful for your question. Very important. Yes, in fact, as you probably would have noted, I said reconciliation is part and parcel of administration of justice, but it's the context that matters. I mean, my view is that as I stated, speaking against the motion, is that we must prosecute, but also there is an element of reconciliation. We need to look at context here. I mean, what happened in Ghana, I'm not yet familiar with the fact in Ghana, but if that is something that warrants the Ghana Parliament to actually pass a law that provides sort of that reconciliation process to begin or to start, then that is something that may not be applicable to Gambia situation. But the Gambia situation, it all depends on what both sides are willing to do. My position is very clear, Mr. Cisse, is this. There must be criminal prosecution. And that criminal prosecution, what it gives parties, the opportunity to put forward their case before a competent court, so that there could be a confirmation, a firm confirmation by the judicial with the competency, rather than TRC. So it is my view that, crimes that are serious and crimes, those people who bear the greatest responsibility must face criminal prosecution. I mean, the evidence would have to be the one that would be right on if anyone needs to bring Jammeh to prosecutions or to criminal prosecution. If you have no evidence, then it will be impossible to bring him to that. Of course, there is an opportunity for Jammeh to reconcile with Gambians, Jammeh or any other perpetrators, to come to their knee and said, we know what we have done was wrong. Something has motivated us to do this. Of course, we know, as I said before, there are a lot of historical injustice that lead people to assume power or to aggressively take power, political power. We are aware of that. But that does not justify for anyone to torture or kill innocent people. That is my contention here. So there is an opportunity, but of course, my view is that the judicial process is the most effective and the most efficient way of dealing with that. And we should prosecute, but we should also look at ways in which we can bring the society together as one, because we are all Gambians. That is the bottom line is that. But of course, we have to punish those who have inflicted serious crime on citizens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Demba. I think, Mr. Demba, you are going to be a busy man. We have another question for you, but also, I'm not sure. Yes, the question is from our Jammeh. I'm not sure whether whether the producer has found it. But when the producer, okay, yes, the question is here for you, Mr. Demba. Gambia condoned President Jawara's crimes in his time. Okay, what? Right, I don't think this is the question. That question was about 1981, I think. But I'll just read it out. I think there are a few questions, but I asked the question. Mr. Jammeh, whenever you find it, you can bring it on the screen. I read the question from here. The question is, if Gambians can forgive Jawara, who ordered mass killings in the 1981 coup, then why disturb President Jammeh?
Okay. Well, I think you know it's a very I mean I'm not aware of any time when Gambians really has had forgiven Jawara for crime committed at that particular time. Is it the case that the state failed miserably to take its responsibility and do what it's supposed to do? Because in my view, if crimes were committed during those times, of course, you know, they want the attention. They should have been. But what we are talking about now is the current situation. You know, it means what sometimes what happens, this is politics and law, because there has to be a political will to bring about criminal prosecution or public hearing. At the material time, you know, I mean, Jawara government has been sort of in power for many years. I mean, if you ask me personally whether I have forgiven Jawara for that, or Jawara government at the material time, I would say no, if it was not investigated. So, you know, I don't think Gambian has forgiven Jawara for that. Maybe the Gambians were not aware, and which was the failure of the government at the material time.
Okay, can I come in there quickly?
Okay. Thank you very much. What we are going to have now, because we are almost at the end of this session, what we'll have now is, yes, you'll have your time to do your closing remarks. But have you decided which of you is doing the closing remarks? Lamin, Mr. Tamba, you and Colonel Sarr?
I did the opening, so maybe it'll be fair on Colonel Sarr to do the closing.
Yeah, but then I think you wanted to respond.
Mr. Tamba, have you decided who's going to do the closing remarks between the two of you?
Yeah, it's Mr. Colonel Sarr will do the closing, but I wanted to clarify something that Mr. Demba just said. Just one minute at most. Can you guys hear me? It looks like Pa Sambou is frozen.
Pa Sambou, yeah, is like he's out. In fact,
oh, you're back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. Have you decided which of you is going to be doing the closing remarks?
Yes, Colonel Sarr will do the closing, but I wanted to clarify one thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine. The reason why I was asking was to try to manage the time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what I have is Lamin Tamba. I'll have you to come in for now. Obviously, once you speak, then I will be obliged to give Mr. Dem an opportunity to also speak, and then I'll go to Fatou Diaw if you have any closing comments or any closing question or any closing remarks. You can put them across. And then after that, we'll go to the we'll take a break and go to the next segment. Yes, Lamin Tamba coming, then lawyer Demba, then lawyer Diaw.
So somebody asked if Jammeh would come to the TRRC, and my answer is Jammeh will have to decide that. At the moment, there's no obligation for Jammeh to go because he's got the laws empowering him not to go and sit before any commission. All right. So the TRRC is actually a tribunal, commission, or whatever you call it, or quasi-court. So let's leave that to Jammeh himself to decide. Whether Jammeh should apologize to people, I said this at the beginning of my advocacy, that saying sorry doesn't mean you actually done it. Because you were the president at that time, you can say, look, okay, these things happened. Even I wasn't aware, or even if I was aware, I'm so sorry they happened while I was the president. Because they always say the buck always stops with the president. But legal responsibility or criminal responsibility is different. So you can say, all right, I'm sorry these things happened. I wish they never did. But if I come back to government again, or whenever somebody comes to government, this and this and that they should put in place to ensure there's no recurrence. And I would like to refer lawyer Demba to immunity rationale personnel. That will be his homework. He did say earlier that the diplomat in Britain who had diplomatic immunity, the alleged murder he committed was different from Jammeh. No, it's not. In fact, the one in the UK is different because this one, the woman actually ran over this man and killed him, allegedly. But the woman was the wife of the diplomat. And the UK court said because of diplomatic immunity, they can't waive it. She's covered. Jammeh, by all
if we can be brief, there's one more question, Lamin Tamba. If we can be brief. Yeah.
Okay, so Jammeh was not, none of the witnesses so far said Jammeh was there in actual crime scene. And none of them said somebody died in the state hands and they never investigated that death. So I wanted to clarify that with lawyer Demba. Go and research immunity rationale.
Okay,
and then look at
I shall respond to you now, Mr. Tamba.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're not aware, that Pinot said that is what General Pinot said has deployed.
I know Pinot's case very well. I know.
All right. Okay. Let me just put it to you. Can you just give me a minute to put a point across to you, sir?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I put it to you that actually it is right that rational immunity has been displaced, particularly for human rights violations. I don't know the evidence that that they have adduced for Jammeh at the moment. My position is very clear. Don't conflate it, okay?
Yeah.
My position is
he was involved in himself. Pinot said
Mr. Tamba, can you? Okay. Yeah. Right? Can I have the floor?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I'm grateful. Right. If I put it to you, rational immunity, I don't have to do a homework on that, okay?
All right. Okay.
All right. Just understand that. All right. So because that was the same doctrine that was deployed, because that's provided by the Geneva Convention, right? Yeah. But the problem that you have got, which my landed friend has mentioned to you, what is state duty is very difficult to actually identify, because it is actually, it's actually mad thinking to think that a state, an abstract state, can go and kill people, because a state doesn't do that. Because the purpose of the state is actually to protect and preserve life. So the state itself, the responsibility the state itself has been charged with. You are telling me that the state commit that crime? That must be a joke, Mr. Tamba. Okay? Let's stick to the facts here. Yeah. The facts are what we are saying here. We are not saying that Jammeh, there is sufficient evidence to prosecute Jammeh, what we said, if you look at the heading of the debate, which I'm advising you to reference on it, right? It is that shall we reconcile or rather prosecute? My position is very clear. We shall. I don't know the evidence. Okay?
I can give you the evidence.
And I'm putting it to you.
Yeah.
National material has been displaced by international law, particularly for human rights violation. So that's the position of the law. I would advise you to do your research on that.
Okay.
But I'll be moving on to the other subject matter. We can finish this debate after backstage if you would like to further discuss this. I'll be more than happy to guide you. But yes, Mr. Sambou, I give the floor to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Demba. Fadu Jao, if you bear with me, I think we have a question from John Charles Njie. I think this question is for everybody. All three of you. We'll wait for John Charles Njie to come in. Is John Charles Njie on, or does he want me to ask the question on his behalf? Mr. Jammeh, is John Charles Njie on to ask his question, or should I ask it on his behalf? Okay, it looks like we're still having some technical difficulties with Mr. Njie, but I'll ask the question on his behalf. I'll start with Colonel Sarr, then I'll go to Mr. Demba, then I'll finish with Lamin Tamba. But please, if we can keep it brief, because I think we're slightly overshooting our time. Yeah. The question is, what would you? Okay, Mr. Njie, I think you are on mute. Once you unmute, you should be able to direct your question to the speakers. Yes, I'll ask the question anyway. It looks like he's not coming on. But anyway, the question is, what would you say will work in the interest of our country for social cohesion?
Samsudeen, I think Colonel Sarr.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the question is, what would you say will work in the interest of our country for social cohesion? Yes, the question is there on the screen. That is from one of our studio guests, John Charles Njie from the Gambia.
Yes, apparently I think this is not the Gambian situation is not a unique situation. We have seen incidents like this of worse nature in other countries, like in Ghana.
But in the case of but I think the question is more in the case of the Gambia. What do we think will be the best thing to do to keep social cohesion intact?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to. I was developing.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
That like we have seen situations like this happen in Ghana, Rwanda, of situations of worse nature, and even Nigeria, because we always have to respect the fact that military regimes were a phenomenon that was generally accepted when it was illegal, and these governments prevail in an era in the evolution of African politics. Now we have transcended that period. Now it is about trying to see how to adjust to something more sustainable and realistic and democratic. So we are in a learning process. And I think we should be a little bit more reconciliatory in our approach of the whole aftermath of what happened, rather than being this hawkish about pursuing each other to punish those who went wrong. It was a state machinery that, if I quote this, Mr. Solomon, the learned friend Solomon says, he said, governments are to protect people, preserve and protect people. That's about the law, going about the law. It's not only that, but protect properties as well. Now, in the process of trying to respect this tenant, you know, serious things happen. And out of not intentional things as such, even like you take, for instance, in Egypt, Sisi, when he found out that the Muslim Brotherhood were going to render the country ungovernable, he took radical measures that were very dirty, very detrimental, very brutal, and deadly. But the international community gave him a pass for restoring law and order. You see, only governments can get away with that. So I want us to go back and look at ourselves and stop this. Let's pursuing each other's jugular vein to slaughter those who slaughtered yesterday.
Okay, so you think, in your view, then you think that reconciliation would be better for social cohesion?
That's correct. That's the bottom line. We have to reconcile, you know, and you know, understand that we may not know deeply what went wrong based on those who are saying that this is how it went wrong. You know, like I said in the beginning, that I am a perfect example of somebody who at one point thought was a victim of Jammeh, but I evolved out of that. From my experience, my exposure, I learned that no, this was a passing phenomenon, that I was just part of that historic perspective. But in reality, you know, in fact, I think I was even saved by what happened rather than being a victim. So that's why I forgave him.
Okay.
And we forgot what happened. And there is a beautiful reconciliation after that. I think everybody could do that, and we go ahead. Because by saying that Jammeh was bad, you know, there are almost about 60% of Gambians who think he was the best that had happened in the country since sliced bread came into the world.
Okay.
You know, so that's
okay.
Reconciliation.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'll move on to Mr. Demba. Yeah, Mr. Demba and Mr. Tamba, if you can keep it brief, because we are slightly overshooting our time. And yes, the question, if you can bring it on the screen again, is what would you say will work in the best interest of our country and for social cohesion, Mr. Demba?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sambou, for that very important questions. You know, I think is a very relevant one, and the one that myself I think deeply in my mind. How do we come, you know, together as Gambians? Because in the end, we are all Gambians. Of course, social cohesion is a big concept, you know, but how do we promote social cohesion? Is looking at the way in which we address issue of inequality in our society, the way we ensure that we respect each other, we ensure that everyone is given the same opportunity as others, and everyone is treated with respect, and also recognize each other culture, because a culture is an identity. Identity is an important as integral part of a human being. So the way we recognize that and live together, and the way government bring policies that will promote equality among people, the way government promote interdialogue within community, to promote that. In Gambia, we are lucky to some respect, we have that level of interconnection. So, you know, I would say this, you know, the way to go ahead is, one, is to ensure that, you know, those who do wrong are punished, but also reconcile together as one Gambia and one family. You know, I think that's important. We cannot adopt an apologist approach. We have to be fair to each and everyone. It is important that we are inclusive. We have an inclusive democracy. And we also need to look at the decision-making process, you know, particularly in the House of Representatives. Maybe there might be a case of proportional representation, there might be a case, because Gambia has so many tribes, to ensure that each tribe understand that they have a stake in the state, because that's important aspect of social cohesion. So
Yeah,
I think with that,
I think the question was in the context of the topic today.
in the context of the topic today,
yeah,
it's actually promoting those dialogue. Reconciliation, as I said, can only happen when we are sure that the victim are given effective remedy. Reconciliation can only happen if we are sure we can restore public trust in the state. Without that, reconciliation will not be able to take place. There is a saying which says a society cannot forget for what it cannot punish. So crucially important, we can promote social cohesion by recognizing that we need to reconcile, but also punishing those who bear the greatest responsibility, as I said. And that would be my point on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, to you, Lamin Tamba, now the same question. And then after Lamin Tamba, if we can keep it brief, please. After Lamin Tamba, we'll go to Fatou Jao. Then after Fatou Jao, we'll take our break. Then when we come back, we can do the closing remarks.
Okay.
Lamin Tamba, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So I'm glad Lawyer Demba touched on culture again. Our cultural setting, our social setting, our cultural upbringing, our social upbringing. These are very important mechanisms in our day-to-day lives. In fact, the Gambian law, although we mimic a lot of UK law, reflects a lot of what we do culturally. All right. So if it doesn't reflect what we do culturally, we will not operate as a society. In the UK system, you can marry many wives, but you can only legally register one. All right. In the Gambia, you can marry many wives and register them. Nothing's wrong with that. So therefore, everything that we do should be looked at in our cultural and social context. Now, there's nothing wrong with reconciliation. Jammeh can come back and say, sorry, I said this before. It doesn't mean he did it. It could also mean he did it. Who knows? But from where I am now, for us to go forward, we have to redo the TRRC with independent people who had no bone of contention with Jammeh. Nothing to pick against him, to investigate, because we need to make sure these things are in record. Reason why I say this is because we cannot change the system if we didn't know where the system was weak. So for us to go forward and stop a repeat of what happened, because some of it I heard is low-level stuff. I had a problem with Pasamba Jr., and I called my friend at NIA to come and pick him up and give him a few licks and release him. It was happening at that level sometimes. That is not the state system. But that's a state system which we must change, and we cannot change that if we don't investigate and find the weaknesses. However, reconciliation can happen without us having to go through the judicial system. Look, we have the freshest of cases. Solo Sandeng's case, may his soul rest in peace, is the freshest of cases. We are running up to 5 years now and we cannot prosecute it. And from what I heard, the evidence is so thin, there's likely going to be no compelling evidence to prosecute or to convict the NIA-9. I don't want to prejudice what the court is doing now. I don't want to be charged for perjury. But according to insiders who know the case very well, the evidence to go on to prove that these people actually murdered him is very weak. And criminally, you know how difficult it is to prove beyond reasonable doubt. So therefore, we recognize that certain things happen and they shouldn't be happening. How do we change these? We change the system. We come together, open our chest, tell the truth, and then we look at ways of ensuring that doesn't happen again. Prosecuting Jammeh under our current jurisdiction is difficult, almost close to impossible. I mean, look, their own lawyers, the white saviors, have told you now, unless we create a hybrid court under the current statutes, under the current conventions, they may never be able to prosecute Jammeh. You will prosecute Jammeh for bearing the greater responsibility, but you cannot say he was there Again, the difference between Jammeh and Pinochet apparently was involved himself physically in doing these things. Jammeh, so far, no one said he was there and bundled Solo Sandeng into the grave, or he was there and shot somebody in the head. We don't have that yet. But the people I speak to say most of these deaths, if they're reported and he knows it, they've investigated it. We're not happy with the investigation report, but most of the deaths in the state hands have been investigated and there are reports there. So therefore, we need to look at how we're going to, in the interest of cohesion, Jammeh is in fact the smallest part in this. What's happening now is tribalism, nepotism, fighting against region, and we're even fighting ourselves. So how do we reconcile that? Jammeh is just one tiny little player in the context of Ghana. He's significant. Probably individually, he's the most significant person. But in terms of the whole country, he's just the one problem. We have got communities going against each other. We've got people calling each other and perpetrating tribalism. We need to reconcile and come together as one. We can't do that unless we sit down, open up and say, look, we've all been silly. Let's now do this and change the system. Make sure we have a meritocracy in our country. Make sure it doesn't matter where you come from, the platform and the opportunities are the same for every single person. We cannot do that by going to court, because when we go to court, it's going to create even more fracture. So I hear some people saying no reconciliation without justice or without prosecution. In fact, it is that prosecution which is going to create the biggest rift. And I'm afraid, like Reed Brody, their white savior, said, the dictator, black dictator hunter, because Trump is there now, he'll not go and hunt Trump, but Trump is his next door neighbor. Like he said, trying Jammeh on Gambian soil now will create a huge national security threat. It'll be foolish to try him on Gambian soil. And I agree with him. Therefore, let's call Jammeh back and say to him, look, man, tell us what you know about this, because we need to find this. We need to find this so that we can change the system. You say sorry, we say sorry. Doesn't mean you done it. Maybe you did it. But we want to make sure these things don't repeat ever.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. I'm just cutting you there because I'm just conscious of the time. So we'll now go to Fatou Jawo, and then after Fatou Jawo we can take the break. Then we can do the closing remarks. Then for those of you who are still watching us online, please do not go away, because the voting would start in the next segment. We're going to share the link for you to vote again, and that vote is going to determine who the winner of tonight's debate is. So, Fatou Jawo, the floor is yours.
Okay. I'm just trying to be balanced here. So I have a question for is it my colleague, Mr. Demba? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are coming across very clearly.
Yes, Ms. Yao, I can hear you very well.
Okay, I was saying, from your debate, are you assuming that there cannot be reconciliation or justice without prosecution? If yes, how about reparations for the alleged victims? Indeed,
reparation is an important aspect of transitional justice, and that, of course, it goes some ways to actually heal the feeling or the suffering the victims have suffered. Yes, I think you are right. That is also another aspect that could be given sort of. But of course, as you are aware, those things, they sometimes require resources, but also they need victim involvement, because that's important. It is one that one has to determine what one is entitled to, what one is not entitled to, and things like that. So, but it's an effective way, to some respect. It has a role in justice. Of course, reconciliation and peace are comparable in many respects. They are, as you know, they have nexus. Reconciliation is within justice. It's an element of justice, of delivery of justice. But of course, I think tonight what we are focusing on It is whether we just walk away and said, you know what, the victims are going to forget. I think if we have that in mind, we are diluting ourselves, because it's very difficult for people to forget if serious harm has been inflicted on them for no good reason. So reconciliation can happen in many sense, and part of that reconciliation, reparation, is an important element. Right now in the Gambia, I don't know to what extent the Truth Commission has done that, but of course I take a view that they have taken some step. Whether that is sufficient or not, that is a matter for debate. But in my view, reconciliation, it can happen in Gambia, but it does not mean that we have to give a blank check to the perpetrators. We must bring them to justice, and they must have their day in court. That means that their rights are protected. They might not be found guilty. They might be found guilty. So, but that's the process of the law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Demba. At this point, we were supposed to be going to a break, but for time reasons, I think we can go straight into the closing remarks. We'll have Colonel Sarr for the motion and Mr. Demba against the motion. You have 3 minutes each, uninterrupted. And what we are going to do after that is we'll go for a long break. And whilst we are on that long break, the link would be shared on the screen for those of you who are watching. Those of you who are debating too, you do have a vote. I'm sure we can guess how 3 of you are going to vote. And Fatou Jao, you will have the vote as well. But the link would be shared on the screen. The link for the final voting, that would be shared on the screen after the closing remarks. We'll go for a long break. Then when we come back, we'll announce the results. So for now, the same rules apply again. When you have a minute left, you'll hear that 3 times, and once the 3 minutes are up, you'll hear the same sound continuously. Colonel Sarr, closing remarks. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much for the great debate, and I am thanking every member of the panel and listeners and those watching us from everywhere. But to complete this, coming to my conclusion, I would say that yes, we need to reconcile and try to do it in a reasonable way. Like my partner, colleague has said, Tamba, we should sit together and look at the whole situation, knowing that it has already been corrupted and beyond reparation. And for us to move forward, we have to work out something more credible and more acceptable and more reconciliatory than this confrontational and witch hunting method being adopted by especially the TRRC, because we cannot forget the fact that the TRRC has already established the foundation on where we are to go forward from here after the post-Jammeh era. Yes, Mr. Landed Solomon Demba has talked about before reconciliation, we have to repair, but or there is a probability for repetition of the problem. He quoted the Nuremberg trial of the Second World War, where Nazi criminals were prosecuted, but look, dragging down to the 1981 coup d'etat, that challenges the idea that if reparation is not done, reconciliation cannot happen. Because 1981, there was never any reparation or consideration of the victims at all. But we transcended it, and up to the day Jawara was coup d'etat, taken out of this country, people have been saying that he had the best government that ever existed. And even after the post-Jammeh era, they are beginning to recreate that narrative that Jawara was the best thing that ever happened here. Nonetheless, Jawara's regime conducted the worst nightmare in terms of human, kill more people, 10 times more people than Jammeh has killed in 22 years. And up to even after everything was done, we are not even accounting for those who died, because I still know families who don't know where their kids were buried. Yeah. And nobody make an effort to at least get a plaque and say these were the people who died. Jawara went to Senegal and rewarded the Senegalese government for the death of 33 Senegalese. But over 800 Gambians have died and never remembered. So you see, it's the state that can get away with that. Because, and if Jammeh had pursued that and said, I have taken out Jawara, I'm going to look into this, Jammeh would not have done anything constructive in this country, because he would have divided the country. Nobody will give him the benefit of any doubt, regardless of the fact that it was a coup d'etat, and then his government will collapse. So the idea of saying that if we don't punish, reconciliation is not possible, and really a government, for that matter, I think it is really not a realistic assessment of how history evolved, you know. So that is why I think we could have found a path of coming together, forge ahead, and you know, reconcile in a way that will help us protect Barrow tomorrow. Because if you want to hang Jammeh, the rest assured, Barrow will be hung tomorrow. Arona Drameh died. Arona Jatta died out of the same conditions that Solo Sandeng died. You know, if you want to pay $53 million to some broke lawyers to augment their poor conditions, to prosecute, you know, to defend 26 demonstrators, why not give them the money to repair? I'm sure they would have understood it, because they also had a responsibility in listening to fools from abroad, paying them to come and dismantle the system without thinking about consequence. Because when they came to do the riot, the intention was to bring down the government. It has been said at the TRRC that they were paid, funded, and encouraged that if they come out, the whole Gambia will follow them, and they can bring down the government. So the consequence is not as bad as they. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I think we should try and reconcile, because already the system, the method we have been using for whatever is corrupted, and it can never go this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sarr. We'll now go to Mr. Demba for your closing remarks. The floor is yours, Mr. Demba.
Thank you, fellow Gambians. I'm very grateful today to sit here with you to express my view objectively as I can. I mean, mine is that, of course, there is an element of reconciliation in the administration of justice. Everyone knows that, because the point of transitional justice is to reconcile for the peace and establish and stability of a nation. But the only way you attain peace is by sorting out the past. You cannot just leave the past behind and say that, okay, all right, everything is okay, let's just move on. No, people have to be accountable, because when people occupy a position of power, if that power has been abused or used inappropriately, it's quite rightly true, we keep them accountable. But of course, we have to ensure that their rights are protected. Of course, you know, the state can lawfully kill, but the state is not allowed to unlawfully kill. The state is not allowed to violate the right of the citizen, because there is a moral obligation on those people in power, but also a legal obligation, since they've taken oath to be in public office, to say that I will maintain the security, preserve the dignity of my citizens. If they violate those, if they use those in a way that actually contrary reason, I think it is right that we reflect on those and have a proper judicial review of them, so that we can get to the understanding, because that would give the society a better understanding. Because right now, as my other side has mentioned, to say that the TRRC, they have no faith in the TRRC proceedings. That suggests to me the only proceeding they will have faith in is the judicial proceeding, because that is more impartial. And I think they have agreed with me. Voters, I would say to you that they have agreed as part of reconciliation, there should be justice, because justice means that we establish trust in the state. If we fail to sort out the past will continue to haunt the future, and it would infect the future and the present. Make no mistake, no state officers should be allowed to use state powers against innocent citizens. Because we need to set an example. We need to set the right message. Because we are part of the international community, we need to make sure that we live up to that obligation. It's for nothing, for not my individual interest, because I'm objective. It is for the interest of our society in general, is to bring those people, even for the interest of the perpetrators, because that would allow us, as some of them has indicated, they have no faith in the TRRC. So I think it is quite right they are represented by fearless advocates in court so that they can put forward their case. Maybe they have a case, you know. So, as I said at the beginning of a society cannot forget what it cannot punish. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is important we reconcile, but it must be qualified. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Demba. So to our viewers, and in fact to the speakers, thank you very much for turning up. But please do not go away, because we still have the voting to do, and the final results will be announced. But in the meantime, just to recap, the preliminary voting, we had for the motion, yes, reconcile, it was 64.3%, and no, prosecute against the motion, it was 31.5%, and undecided was 4.2%. So the winner would be the person who has convinced more people from their starting position. And we'll shortly go for a break. And whilst we are on the break, those of you that are watching, look out for a link that would be shared in the comments section. It would be shared by the Gunjur Online Facebook admin. You just watch out for that. Once that comes on the comment, you can just click it, and it's one question. So you cast your vote. You can only vote once, unfortunately. So cast your vote, and once that is done, the voting will be open for about 10 minutes. Then after that, we'll come back, announce the final results, and that would be the end. So we'll now go for a break for the voting to commence. See you shortly.
Sponsor a Gambian girl through SAG Foundation. We are placing girls on the path to success through education. Our aim is to realize a Gambia where every girl is given equal access to education to reach their full potential. This is how we do it through our model of effecting generational systematic change. This is Amy. She is not in school, an underprivileged girl excluded from school due to lack of financial support. The SAG Foundation enrolled her into school, and she is equipped with all the essential resources to have a quality education. Amy is now making a difference in her community. Amy is now contributing towards the generational systematic change. Education changes everything for a girl.
Ethnicisles.com. Ethnic Isles is a newly launched online store brought to you by Kadijaba to the Senegambian African community. Ethnic Isles will sell all your ethnic products at a reasonable price, just under one click. Visit our friendly online site where you can buy products from clothing, groceries, fashion accessories, African and Caribbean food, all under one roof. Ethnic Isle is also providing a door-to-door delivery service to your families in the Gambia. Tell your friends and families back home, Ethnic Isle is here for easy and hassle-free shopping on www.ethnicisles.com. Any information, contact our friendly admin. We're here to help. Ethnic Isles is our own.
Sambou, are you counting the vote?
Is the screen back on?
No.
I didn't even realize that we were back. I thought we were still on the break. Okay. Mr. Jammeh, can we go on a short break? Because I'm yet to tabulate the results, because we have to tabulate the results with the preliminary ones to get a final figure.
Don't be like
December 30th, 2014, a group of Gambians decided to use force and overthrow President Yahya Jammeh, whose name and regime were associated with systematic suppression of freedom, extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, rape, and other gross human rights abuses. The assault on the Banjul State House took the lives of 3 members of the commando. It was Colonel Lamin Sane, Captain Jaga Jany, and Sergeant Alaji Jaja Nyas. Yahya Jammeh kept the remains of these fallen Gambians away of their families until his forced departure from power in January 2017, after losing the December 2016 presidential election to Adama Barrow. In January 2019, the bodies of the December 30th fallen commando were finally returned to their kinsmen in a state-organized ceremony. The New Gambia government officials hailed the sacrifice of Lamin Sane, Njie and Alaji Jajanyas to save Gambians from the dictatorship of Yaya Jammeh. The Gambia official state television GRTS called the fallen commando heroes. That one day, Yaya Jammeh will be compelled to account for his reign of 22 years of terror.
It would be easy for me to say we kill him, but then we will be just like him. The TRRC process is on. People are hearing for themselves, literally, directly from the victims and the perpetrators, what's been done to them, the victims, and what has been done to them by the perpetrators. We are hearing from both sides. People who literally commit serious crimes are coming out and saying, I, Mr. So-and-so, went and did the A, B, C, D, E, and yes, I got instructions from Yaya and his gang. This is not hearsay anymore, such and such. Opposition are the ones who are, propaganda, or journalists are doing their fake stuff. No.
sponsor a Gambian girl through SAG Foundation. We are placing girls on the path to success through education. Our aim is to realize a Gambia where every girl is given equal access to education to reach their full potential. This is how we do it through our model of affecting generational systematic change. This is Amy. She is not in school, an underprivileged girl excluded from school due to lack of financial support. The SAG Foundation enrolled her into school, and she is equipped with all the essential resources to have a quality education. Amy is now making a difference in her community. Amy is now contributing towards the generational systematic change. Education changes everything for a girl.
You're listening to Empire Radio 1.
Everyone has a purpose, and it is this purpose you pursue that defines you. The reason why we, Dalaba Ecology, located on the Gunjur-Brikama Highway, is here is to create peaceful environment and conducive atmosphere for our esteemed guests, both nationals and those who choose the Gambia as their final destination. Our accommodations are modern standards, well-spaced and well-ventilated seminar and conference rooms. There is no other excellent venue for your birthdays and wedding programs than Dalaba Eco Lodge. So come and experience our affordable luxuries in sustainable environment. Our rooms are inside our gardens filled with sweet-smelling flowers and cozy feelings of nature. Frequent visits to the Gunjut Sandy Beach with our wonderful transport services at no cost is all the time available. To enchant your stay furthermore, at Dalaba Eco Lodge, we create the following: bird watching, bike rentals for visiting local markets, and many other places of interest, city tours and boat trips, etc. For more details, you can take the digits 00220-360-7043. Email dalabaecolodge78@gmail.com. Facebook Dalaba Eco Lodge Gambia. Book your places now to experience memorable adventures one cannot afford to miss.
You're mute, Pasamba, you're mute. Pasamba, you're mute.
Ethnic Isles, ethnicisles.com. Coco Ethnic Isles, the gun bubes. Ethnic Isles, the website bubes. The boutique sibut internet. Kulenko isi di kali jabang. Jammeh Legosis, askani and mbokki Senegambia. Atunu Africa. Ethnic Isles, amal na len bepa heti bagas. Yu demen ki si yere ak pisu rafet. Bagas si leka yu amul fasong. Boole si nag Ethnic Isles na fàttewuñ suñ jigéen ñi amal na ay takkaay rafet yoo xam ne
Sambou, you're mute.
We cannot hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I think there was a bit of a technical issue here. Yes. Just to say that for those of you that are watching, as you can see, these are the final results of the voting, because before we started the program, there was a preliminary vote that happened, if you could recall, and 64.3 of you voted in favor of the motion to suggest that we should reconcile, and 31% of you 0.5 of you voted against the motion to say that we should prosecute Jammeh, and for a little over 4% voted to say that we should to say they were undecided. So at the end, those for the motion have convinced 14.2% more people to vote in favor of the motion, and Mr. Lawyer Demba, that was arguing against the motion, lost 10% of what he had. So as you can see on the screen, the final result is those for the motion that advanced the case that we should reconcile have actually won tonight's debate. So I'm not sure whether any of them want to react to the results just briefly. Then we'll wrap up. Then obviously we can bring this to a close. Does any of you have any?
No, yeah, I wanted to say something. Okay. I think it is actually, I must congratulate the other side for winning the debate on the issue of reconciliation. I think it is the mind of the Gambians, and it is something that, we all have to sort of look at it very carefully. But I do believe that, we would still continue to advance our case because I think it's the most cogent and prudent position. So that, for the interest of the society. But thank you very much for your vote. I appreciate that. And I congratulate Mr. Sambou and Mr. Sarr for putting forward a very compelling argument, for the motion. But of course, this was a difficult one since the start. But anyway, it's never the ending one. Thank you.
Yeah, that's Mr. Tamba and Colonel Sarr. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Does any of you want to react to the results, Lamin, Tamba, and Colonel?
Yeah, I'll go quickly. Thank you very much, Gunjur Online. Again, brilliant job. Thank you very much for Sambou Jr. I appreciate being given the platform again. I know many people, but I don't speak on any platform to lie or to try and bend the truth. And you know what? This vote online is, I'll confidently say this is a reflection of how Gambians feel on the ground right now, because Gambians have now seen, so this is what I said to the APRC before. In fact, TRRC is a blessing in disguise. It has shown a cross-section of our society how evil they can become, but how they can commit acts and blame somebody else. So now that people have seen this is just not just one person or one tribe or one region doing it. This is all of us doing it. So therefore, the best way to do it is to come together and say, look, we thought it was just a few people or some people doing it. Now that we know it's a cross-section of our society, we're all wrong. Let's sort this out like we do it culturally and move on. 74% of the vote, 64% of the vote, it's overwhelming majority don't have appetite for a bruising legal action again. Let's sit down, open up and say, look, we're not going to repeat this again. This is the system we want the government to put in place to ensure there's no repeat of these things going forward. And Mr. Demba, thank you very much for coming in and going against the motion. You're a very brave man. Like you said, the job was difficult from the beginning because your colleague couldn't make it. But even if he did, he was going to be fighting with his back against the wall. But thank you very much for everyone who's viewing and voting. You guys are the real heroes. Like I always say, you don't have to like what somebody says, but if it's the truth, recognize it, respect it. We're Gambians, we're used to talking our problems through and sorting them out, and long may that continue. At the end of the day, we want a system in place which protects every single person, which also ensures there's a meritocracy, like I mentioned before. You have the merit, you get it. You have the ability, you get it. You have the ability, the platform is the same for all of us. And this is the Gambia that I'm dreaming about right now, just like Jammeh did, but maybe add a little bit more and also try to clamp down on some of the stuff that the rogue elements did under him. And it will change. Even if Jammeh himself comes back, the game will not be the same again.
The debate is over, bro. You are still fighting a battle that you've won.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, Colonel, I'll let you come in there before we wrap up.
You're mute, Colonel.
I think you're on mute. We still cannot hear you. You have to go to the settings. You have to go to your mic settings and then adjust it. You have to go to your mic settings and audio, and then you adjust it from there. Has he dropped out? Or it looks like he's dropped out.
Some technical issues, yeah.
Yes, he has some technical issues. Anyway, we would have loved to hear what his closing remarks were. But anyway, all I would say is, Mr. Demba, Mr. Tamba, and Colonel Sarr, and even Dr. Njie that was unable to make it. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for volunteering your time. You volunteered a good part of your weekend to come to share your thoughts with the Gambian public. And thank you so much. Like I said, this is the first. Hopefully, the aim is this is going to be the first of many debates to come. We have other debates to come. I am not sure. In fact, we have another one next month, but I am sure after this we'll share that. We'll share that flyer. For those of you that are watching, thank you very much for watching, and for those of you that have voted, I would say thank you so much. And for Gunjur Online too, thank you very much for having us on your platform. We hope you are going to have us again sometime next month for our next debate of the year. Without forgetting to, I would also thank my studio guests. It was 3 of them, unfortunately, due to technical problems from Banjul. 2 of them dropped out, but yet still, I would extend a very big thank you to all 3 of them. That is Fatou Jao, Mohamed Dabo, and John Charles Njie. So that brings us to the end of this debate night. Everybody, thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.